Hello everyone, my name is Xu Shen, and today I'm going to give you a brief tutorial on Python, which is going to be used in this class. So the first question is why we learn Python. Python is extremely popular right now, and it's used in a lot of places, including data science. And one of the most important reasons is that Python is easy to learn and read, and it's also highly flexible, so you can write just like 10 lines of code and do a lot of things. And also it has very good library support, so you don't have to you don't have to write everything from scratch. You can just download a package, install it, and use it. Yeah, and Python is not perfect, so the two downsides are it's so flexible that you can create bugs that are hard to find, which you might encounter during the journey of the class. And also Python is relatively slow compared to C, but I think this is actually fine because when we use Python we actually care about how fast we can finish coding. For example, if I need to create a report using the given dataset, I don't really care whether it runs for 1 second or 1 minute. I just care about whether I need a one afternoon to finish coding or I need 3 days, right? That's why we chose Python. And there is a brief history of Python. So it's first released in 1991, which is slightly older than me. And what is important here is we have Python 2 and Python 3. And interestingly, Python 2 is actually officially discontinued as of year 2020. So we should probably learn Python 3, which is the future. The good news is they're actually quite similar to each other, and what we're going to need are mostly common in Python 2 and 3. Okay, so the first thing is to get Python installed. And yeah, I don't have the statistics of your favorite operating system, but I assume some of you will be using Windows, right? And I have a recorded video of the installation. So you see, I give you the link, and you first download the installer onto wherever you want. Double click to run it. Yeah, run it. And so what's important here is you have to add Python to parse. That's important, and just click the default installation. And wait for it to run. Yeah, it's a little bit slow here. Let's just wait a moment because I don't know how to speed it up in OBS. The recording is done in my virtual machine, so it's kind of a little bit slow. Yep. Okay, there we go. So it's installed successfully. And what's next is we need to verify that's properly installed. We type Python, and we see Python 3.8.5 is executed. That's, okay. Let's back to this. Yeah, that's basically the same as the video. And if you're macOS fans, so macOS actually comes with Python pre-installed. So you just need to open your terminal and run Python 3, you're all set. So why we have to run Python 3 explicitly is actually macOS has both Python 2 and 3 installed, and if you don't run Python 3, you will be actually running Python 2. But as I said, it's actually fine because differences, we probably don't touch the differences, so it's all up to you. And I don't know, maybe we have some Linux users and you can take care of yourself, and probably just skip this tutorial because you know everything. Alright, so the next thing before we get into Python is to get a code editor. So you do not have to have a code editor to code. That's kind of, yeah. You can even code with whatever you want, but a good code editor can make your life easier. And well, this is kind of an anecdote that programmers tend to love their code editors really much. And if you ask what is the best code editor among a set of programmers, it's gonna just spark a fierce discussion probably. Yeah. I would recommend VS Code, Visual Studio Code. So it's not the best, but also not the worst. And here's the link for it. You should be able to install it because you just click next, and that's installed. Alright, so let's get the first glimpse of Python. So Python is interpreted, which means you do not have to compile all the program before you run it. That's kind of in contrast to C and Java, which you may have programmed in. Because for example in C you have to really first compile the code and then you run it. But in Python everything is different. So here I start Python 3 and I just type 1 + 1. It gives me the result immediately. It's pretty much like a calculator, right? I don't have to wait. So here I showed that Python can be used as a calculator. Plus, minus, multiply, division. And it just works. And so by default, Python 3 does floating point division. So it's like 1 divided by 3 is 0.3333. That's different in Python 2, which is, kind of confusing. If you want to get the integer division, use // So like, what is the integer result of 20 divided by 3 is actually 6, because 6 multiplied 3 is 18, right? And here 100 divided by 7, the result is 7. If you want modulars, you just use this percentage sign. Yeah, as elementary school math, you can use parentheses to specify the order of the computation. This is important, when the code gets complex, and this line can be ambiguous. So you can put a parenthesis to explicitly tell other people who read the code that I want this to carry out first. And here is the benefit of Python. Python can actually handle arbitrarily large integer numbers. And it's only up to the RAM limit of your computer, right? You see here, I multiply 2 really large integers and it gives me the result. That's different from C or Java because integers in them are limited to 32 or 64 bits unless you use large integer. And one of the important notion in programming is variables. So a variable is according to Wikipedia, a symbolic name associated with a value, and whose associated value may be changed. Yeah, I hope you're not confused by this, but if you see this example, it's pretty clear. You can assign 3 to x, print it, and change it and print it. It just works as the common sense, right? So be careful here. Python does not enforce a strong type on variables. I think you may or may not know strong type, but it's fine. But it just means you can change the type of a variable. So for example, we can first have x equal to 3, which means x is an integer, and then we change x to a string, and it just works. But be warned, please never ever do this, because this is gonna to be really confusing. For example, if you start from x is an integer and you get it to a string, Python is happy with it, but people who read it is gonna to be, to be mad about the code. Okay, so next thing is about a brief intro about strings. So string can be double-quoted or single-quoted in Python. Here you see there are some small differences, but we will not mention it today. So whenever you want a string, you feel free to use double quote or single quote as you wish. So here, those previous examples are just the interactive use of Python. It's like I type one line and it calculates the result and print the result to me. But what if we want to write a longer program like this? We want to do a lot of things in a program and we don't want to type them one line after the other. So we can define a function called main, and we do something here and we call the main function to execute it. And inside the main, we calculate the sum of 1 to 99, which is 49, 50, right? I'll just show you how it actually works in on Windows. So here we have a code editor, and yeah, you type it, but I copy it because I don't want to type. And then you save it to a place you like. You save it as main.py or whatever you want, as here you see it. And you open a terminal, and the important thing is you have to change directory cd to where it is put. So when you run python main.py, the Python interpreter is able to find it. Let's see it again. So, okay. Yeah, just remember you have to cd to where it is. Otherwise, it won't find the file, so you cannot run it, right? And so, the main, the name is just a convention. It doesn't have to be called main. You can call it foobar or start or whatever you want, right? It doesn't have to be main. And there are some stuff that we haven't covered yet inside this function. That is fine. And we ignore it for now and go back to this later. Yeah, this is what I have discussed running a script. Okay, so one of the one of the stuff that people coming from other programming backgrounds like Java or C do not get used to is indentions. So you see here, Python actually uses indentions to annotate code structures. It is somehow restrictive, and it has caused much criticism. I personally also do not like it, but I will tell you how to get used to it. So you see here, the code inside the main is actually indented, and it has to be indented as such. Otherwise, the Python interpreter will complain about it. So if you come from C, you probably think the indentation doesn't important, but that is not the case with Python. Yeah. And I suggest you to use tab to add indentation, because that is easier to handle, especially when you are in a code editor like VS Code. It actually handles the indentation for you. And I didn't give you a principle on how to put indentions, but I said that's strict, which is kind of there's a gap. But I would suggest you to refer to some example code and see how they do it. So like maybe in our labs we will give you some code sample. You will be able to learn how to put it, right? And there's a life-saving tip. So if you see an error message about indentation but everything looks fine, that's probably because you copied some code from other places. For example, if you copy some code from this slide and you want to run it, there is a chance that the indentation screws up. So to deal with it, delete all the indentation and redo them using tabs. That's the way to deal with such cases. Alright. Oh, the other thing is use comment to explain your code. So comments, is an old topic. It's important for other people to understand your code. And if you don't do it, it can be confusing or incomprehensible, and your colleagues or your friends are going to hate you. We will not assign any points for comments because that's also very weird. But please try to practice it, right? And in Python, any line that starts with this, I don't know how to call it, is actually considered a comment. You see, when I type a line that starts with this, the Python interpreter doesn't give me a feedback. That doesn't give me a result. It actually doesn't do anything. Okay. So let's get back to strings because we're going to get into the Python language in more details. So the first thing, if we have an integer and we want to convert it to a string, we need to use the string function. So you see, if value is 10, I run this line of code plus string val, then it just prints the value is 10. This is useful when you finished calculating some result and you want to print the result to the terminal, to the console. So you cannot really just put a value here because you cannot add a string with the integer directly. You have to first convert this integer to a string, and then Python will be happy with adding them together, which means concatenate. Okay? And if you want to go back, so for example, if you accept the input from the user, it's going to be a string 1024, and you want to get the integer value, you use int. Again, after you run int on a string, what you get is an integer, right? You see it. And here, if it's not base 10, they will have to specify a base here. For example, this is actually a hexadecimal string, and we use 16 as the base. We will actually get the value, right? Okay. Now you can actually take a part of a string by specifying the start and end of it. You see, if I the index always starts from 0. That's, we programmers should get used to it. Everything starts from index 0. And you see, if I want to get the this will be O:4, and S is starting from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right? Starts from 5, goes all the way to the 6 and 7, and ends on 7. Is here. So there are some convenient shortcuts on this. If you omit B in this, the slice runs until the end of the string, like this. You can start from the number 5 char and goes all the way to the end. And if you omit A, it will start from the beginning, which means that's essentially a 0 here. It will start from the beginning and run all the way to the end of it. Okay. So we can use find to look for a substring. That is also very useful. It actually returns the index of the first occurrence of the substring. Like this is a S equals to this is a sentence. I want to find where does the word sentence start. It will give me an index 10. And if the substring is not found, then it returns -1. So you can, if I ask you to to check if a certain word is inside a string, you can run find on it, and you check the return value. If it's -1, then it doesn't exist. If it's not -1, then it's the index of it. And here, be careful. It doesn't understand the notion of words. So if you run s.find is at this, it will give you 2, but what you are really looking for is this, right? But it's actually, this actually ends with this, so it will return 2. That's kind of not what you want. And the way you deal with this is you can run s.split, and you have a space here, so it basically splits this string whenever it sees a space, and what you get is a list of words. right? And now you see this is kept intact, and this is shown here. So what you get is actually a list. When you see brackets like this means a list in Python, which we're going to discuss next. List. So list is actually the most important construct in Python. I don't even put a one of, although this is my personal impression, but it's so important that every Python is all about list. So you can see a list is like this. Right, we just list all the numbers in it, and if you type L, it gives you class list, which means this is a list. So if you are debugging your code and you expect something to be a list, but it doesn't, so you can print the type of it and see what Python tells you about it. And here's another important suggestion. This is a warning actually. Do not use list as the variable name because it is a Python keyword. So you see, like if you write list equal to this and type list, I'm not sure what it happens because list is a Python keyword and you can change it. You can change the assignment of the keyword, but later you cannot use this keyword at all, which is kind of weird. Do not use list as the variable name. You can use L1 or whatever you want. Okay, so the next thing is list can be indexed. Like if you want to access the zeroth element of L, you just run L bracket 0. It will give you 3. Right, and the first one is here, give you 4. And then here you can use a minus index, which means starts from the end of it. -1 means the last one. And -3 means last but 3, which gives you the actually 1, 2, 3 here. And this is the flexibility of Python, which is not allowed in many other languages, like in C. This is illegal. And list member can be modified. You can set the value of it. Like if we change the value of the third member, which is actually the fourth member, change it to 0 to 100 like this. And you can add value to the end of the list by using append. It just add this 1, 2, 3, 4 to the end of the list. There is another warning, which is also a common frustration for Python beginners. It's actually append modifies the list in place rather than returning. So please do not do this L equal to L dot append 1, 2, 3, 4 because L dot append 1, 2, 3, 4, although it actually appends the 1, 2, 3, 4 to the end of the list, but it doesn't return anything. So the return value is none. And then you run L equal to this, which means L equal to none. And that's not what you want, right? So you can also insert new elements at any index if you wish. So if you can specify an index here and you insert a new value into it. Again, insert modifies the list rather than return it. So do not write something like L equal to L dot insert, which doesn't make sense. So you can also delete a particular element from the list. So you can see we can delete the second number from it by using delete del DL here. And the 7 is gone, you see it. So if you don't know the index already, but you want to remove the element with a certain value, you can use remove. But the problem is only removes the first occurrence of it. If you want to remove all of it, you can do a loop to check if you can still find anything that has that particular value, and if so, you delete it. And if you cannot find anything, then you just finish removing, right? Also, list can be sliced. So the slicing is a important notion in Python, but I'm not going to cover that in detail. But the way you can slice string can also be used here. You see, We can slice 2 to 5, which gives you the 714 here. You can slice from 4 to the end of the list, which gives you all the number here. And we can even start from the -3, which means I want the last 3 elements of it. So it's quite flexible, right? We can also check membership, like if you want to know if a particular value is inside this list, then use operator in, right? And some common sense like the len, the max, and the min just work as it should. Count is the function to count how many times a value occurs in the list. Like we can see 2 actually occurs twice in this list, right? And if you want to look for something, use index. So if you can see here, we have a L2 is the result of the splitting a string, and then we want to find is. It's actually 1. The index is 0, 1, and 1 is here, right? And if you find the index of something that doesn't exist, it will give you a exception. And so the good news is whenever there is an exception, Python tries to give you a meaningful error message. Like it says the is not in this, which it doesn't exist, right? From there you can go back and see where is the problem and hopefully modify the code to get it work. Right. Now we're moving into some code structures. So the first thing is the if statement. It's actually important for code structure. What it does is actually checks whether a particular condition is met. And if it is met, it runs one statement or a set of statements. And if it is not met, then it runs something else. Yeah, you can see here, this program asks for an integer from the user and convert it to int. And if it is 5, then it will print correct. And if it is not 5, then try it again. So it's the simplest form of conditional, where it checks the value is a particular integer, particular constant, I mean. And here, so a note again is we use double equal sign for comparison of equality, not a single equal here. That's assignment, because if you run a equals to 5, you will put a as 5, the value, and only 2 signs make a comparison here. The good news is, if you do this, if a equal to 5, Python will complain because this is a if statement, but you are doing assignment. So Python helps prevent you do this, but it's not smart enough to handle all the cases. So you still have to be careful by yourself, and I'm also sure someone will encounter this. So I just put this ahead of the class, so I hope you can get through it by yourself. If you have a lot of different conditions, you can use else if to chain them together. Right? You see, we have the else if here. We add a condition 2, and we have statement B and C afterwards. So the next thing is the for loop. So for loop is actually for doing something repeated. So for example, you have 10 documents and you want to process them one by one. You don't copy the code 10 times, right? You just write it once and use a for loop to run it on all of the inputs. And it's actually very simple. You have for loop value in value set, do something. So you see we have for I is the loop value in this list, and print the square of I, which is I multiply I, and it should print 0, 1, 4, 9, 16. And there's a shortcut of getting a list like this, range n. Basically, it will give you all the integer from 0 to n minus 1 in a list. Because this is actually quite common. In C you will write for I equal to 0, I smaller than n, I plus plus. But in Python you simply write for I in range 10, print I multiply I. We will get the same thing. Okay, so another way of doing a loop is use while. While is actually more suitable when you cannot easily express a value set, because if you want to use a for loop, you have to first have a value set, right? But sometimes it's not easy to express, or sometimes you're lazy, you don't want to first create that set. So you can see here, it's essentially the same. I just make the I start from 0 and check if it is smaller than 10. And if it's smaller than 10, it goes here and do something. And if it's already larger or equal to 10, just goes to the line below this. Please do not forget to put this I plus equal to 1. Otherwise, this is actually an infinite loop, right? If you don't update the value of I smaller than 10 will always be true, and you won't get outside of this loop. There is another way to finish a loop. Is you can break out when a certain condition is met. This is suitable for a more complex case. This is actually more suitable for complex cases where you don't want to put the check here. You want to put it inside. For example, I put a while true here. Now, this actually creates an infinite loop, because true is always true, right? And while true means this code is executed repeatedly forever. And we really need some way to break out of it, as we check if I is larger than 10, we just break. You can have other conditions, like if I met certain property, you just break, right? So you can have several other conditions where you want to end this loop. Right. You can use for most cases, and if you find for doesn't suit your need, you go for a while. Okay. Yeah, the next important thing is actually the function. So function actually helps you to organize code, as I said. You don't really want to repeat the code for 100 times. You just define a function. The def is a keyword in Python, which means definition, and the space after that is mandatory. And you create a function signature here. So what is a function signature? It's basically a name. That is what you use when you call the function, and a parameter list. You can have one parameter, you can have two, or you can have whatever many you want. And the parameters can also be a list. So actually, you can pass infinite number of arguments here. But here I just put 2 here, and it has to be a value because I add them and multiply them. And the last thing about a function is we can return a value from within it. It depends it actually depends on you if you wanted to return some value. For example, if it does something and inside the function is finished, for example, if it deletes a file, then you probably don't need to return anything. But for here, if you calculate a value, you probably want to return the value, so the caller can get the result from the function like this, right? Alright, congratulations, we have now covered a handful of Python features. And to learn more, please refer to the references at the end of this slide. So what I have covered is actually, very basic stuff of Python. It doesn't cover many useful or advanced features. So I suggest you, if you have time, you go through the references and see if you can learn more, or you can learn by practice. I mean, by trying to write some code in Python, or you will have to do the lab. Not sure if this week's lab use Python, but yeah, we're going to use Python later. So yeah. And so one other thing about Python before we end is actually pip. So pip is actually the package manager of Python, which allows you install packages easily. So as I said in the first slide of this, packages are important for you to reuse other people's code, right? Because if we do data analytics, we don't really want to write the code from scratch. We probably find some other people's code and see if it already suits our need, and we can kind of base our work on other people's already done work. So it's like we stand on the shoulder of the giants. I'm pretty sure we will be using some other packages later, but if we use Google Colab, I'm not sure we have to install them by ourselves. And also you probably don't have permission to install on the cloud server, but you can always install packages on your local computer by running pip install package name. So yeah, present is actually interesting package. That my slide is actually done with present, so you can first install it, and because I will give you my slides to you, and you will be able to view it. I will give you this basic python.md, which is markdown, and you just run present basic underscore python.md. It will start presenting. I'll just show you here really quick. Yeah, you see, I already installed present, so you just need run present basic underscore python.markdown, and it will just start. Yeah, it's pretty simple, easy to navigate. Just use your right arrow and left arrow or space or whatever you want. Pretty similar to PowerPoint. Yep, we're here. And if you're interested, as actually Markdown is a language that is used pretty common by programmers. We use it on GitHub, a lot of places. So I can write slides in Markdown. If you don't want to install the package, you can open it, and if you have VS Code, you can click this. Oh no, not this one. You just need to open preview, so it will render the slide for you. But you don't have the slide separator. You have the slide separator like this, but you don't get slides. Right? That's fine. I mean, both ways. Okay, so the last thing is the references. We have a official tutorial online, which is not bad, and the official language references, which because for example, if you're not sure about what the find function does, and you can check these references. And I do recommend a book. You don't have to buy it. Maybe you can view it online. It's called Beginning Python from No Voice to Professional, 2nd edition. Yeah. Also, there are lots of other online references or books. So I'm pretty sure you can learn Python pretty well without any pay or anything. So yeah, just go online and visit whatever the references, the resources you like most. And also, don't forget about Google and Stack Overflow. Yeah, when you see traceback and you don't understand what went wrong, you can Google it and look for Stack Overflow or whatever you want. probably you will get the answer because Python is super popular and all people are using it all over the world. So it's very likely that somebody already has encountered the same problem as you. Alright, that's it for the Python crash course. I hope you like it, and if you have any question you can ask me during the office hour, or you can email me, or you can find the answer by yourself. Alright, good luck with programming in Python, and goodbye.